Right now, sitting still feels wrong. Your hands want a task. Your mind wants a notification. And somewhere underneath that itch is a quiet, persistent voice telling you that rest is something you have to earn first. You probably don't question that voice. Most people don't. But what if it isn't your voice at all? What if it was given to you slowly over centuries by a system that needed you to believe it? Here is the strange part. For most of human history, nobody felt this way. People worked hard, yes. They hunted, farmed, built, gathered. But they didn't feel guilty for stopping. So where did the guilt come from? And why does it sit in you so specifically, so personally, like it was always there? The historian E.P. Thompson spent years studying this exact question. He looked at how people in pre-industrial societies actually experienced time, and what he found was almost unrecognizable to us now. Before factories, time wasn't measured. It was felt. Farmers worked according to the task in front of them, not the hour on a clock. You milked the cow when the cow needed milking. You harvested when the crop was ready. Thompson called this task orientation, and inside it, labor had a natural beginning and a natural end. When the task was done, you stopped. Nobody hovered over you with stopwatch. Nobody made you feel lazy for sitting in the shade afterward. Then the factories arrived. And factories don't run on tasks. They run on time. A machine doesn't care whether your task is finished. It cares whether you're standing at your station when the bell rings. So time itself had to be retrained into people. Clocks appeared in town squares. Bells rang to mark shift changes. Workers were fined for lateness, and a new emotional category was invented almost overnight, the feeling of wasting time. Wasting time. Think about how strange that phrase actually is. Time cannot be wasted in nature. A river doesn't waste an afternoon. A forest doesn't feel guilty for not growing fast enough. But once your hours were tied to a wage, every idle minute became a kind of theft. Theft from your employer, and eventually, theft from yourself. This is where the sociologist Max Weber enters the story. Weber noticed something curious about certain strands of Protestant religious life. In some communities, hard, disciplined, unceasing work was treated almost as a spiritual duty. Idleness wasn't just inefficient. It was framed as a moral failing, a sign of weak character, even a sign you might not be among the saved. Weber argued that this mindset quietly fused with the rise of industrial capitalism. The factory owner didn't need to force people to overwork. He just needed them to believe that overworking made them good. And once goodness and productivity get tangled together in someone's mind, rest stops being neutral. It starts to feel like evidence. Evidence that you're falling behind. Evidence that you're not enough. That feeling didn't stay in the factories. It moved into your bedroom, your weekends, the quiet 5 minutes between tasks where your brain finally has nothing left to do. Which brings us to something stranger still, something almost nobody expects. In 2014, the psychologist Timothy Wilson ran an experiment that revealed just how deeply this discomfort with idleness has been wired into the modern mind. He placed people alone in a room with absolutely nothing to do. No phone, no book, just their own thoughts for somewhere between 6 and 15 minutes. Most participants didn't enjoy it. Some found it actively unpleasant. Then Wilson gave them one more option, a button that delivered a mild electric shock to themselves, just to have something to do. A significant number of people pressed it. Some pressed it more than once. People who had said beforehand they would pay money to avoid being shocked chose to shock themselves rather than simply sit with their own minds. Stillness, for many of us, has become more uncomfortable than pain. That is not a personal failure. That is a trained reflex. A separate study, led by the behavioral scientist Christopher C. at the University of Chicago, found something just as telling. Given a choice between sitting idle or completing a pointless, unnecessary task, most people chose the busy work. Not because it accomplished anything. Simply because being busy, even uselessly, felt better than being still. Notice that word. Felt better. Not was better. Felt better. You were not born uncomfortable with rest. Children nap without shame. They stare at clouds without justifying it to anyone. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, doing nothing stopped being neutral and started being dangerous. There's an old irony hiding underneath all of this, one the economist John Maynard Keynes pointed to almost a century ago. In 1930, Keynes predicted that by now, growing technology and productivity would have shrunk the average workweek down to around 15 hours. Machines, he reasoned, would do the heavy lifting, and humans would finally have time to simply live. The technology arrived. The 15-hour week never did. Instead, the hours saved by machines were quietly absorbed back into the system, repackaged as new demands, new metrics, new ways to measure your worth. Productivity went up. Free time did not. And today the message has only gotten louder, just better disguised. Rest is now marketed back to you as another form of productivity. You don't simply sleep, you optimize your sleep. You don't simply relax, you practice self-care so you can perform better tomorrow. Even your downtime gets measured, tracked, justified by its usefulness to your output. The hustle never really left. It just learned to wear softer clothing. Social comparison makes the pressure worse, because now you don't just feel your own guilt, you watch everyone else's highlight reel too. A friend's new business. A stranger's 6 a.m. workout. A colleague's side project, announced with quiet pride. Each one lands like a small accusation. Why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you further along? The highlight reel is not a life. You are comparing your unfiltered Tuesday afternoon to someone else's most polished 5 seconds. The math was never fair to begin with. Notice how often the praise in your life has been about what you did, rarely about who you were while doing nothing at all. Notice how your own mind narrates an unproductive afternoon, lazy, behind, wasted, instead of simply human. This is internalized capitalism. Not a system out there somewhere, but a system that moved in, unpacked its bags, and started speaking in your own voice. It tells you that your worth is measured in output. It tells you that stillness must be justified. It tells you that an afternoon spent doing nothing needs to be defended, even to yourself. But here is the quiet, counterintuitive truth underneath all of it. Rest was never the threat. Rest was the original state. Before clocks, before factories, before anyone tied your value to your output, humans rested as naturally as they worked. The guilt is not ancient. It is, historically speaking, recent. Manufactured. Installed. Which means it can be uninstalled too. Not by forcing yourself to relax harder. That just turns rest into one more task to optimize. But by noticing the voice when it speaks. Hearing it say lazy and quietly asking, whose voice is that really? The next time you sit still and your hands start reaching for something, anything, to hold, pause there for a second longer than feels comfortable. That discomfort is not weakness. Is evidence of how thoroughly the lesson worked. And evidence, once you see it clearly, starts to lose its grip. You can let an afternoon pass with nothing to show for it. The sky will not fall. No one is keeping score except the voice that was trained to. Unproductivity isn't a flaw in your character. It is in many ways the truest art form left to you, the one quiet rebellion that costs nothing and asks for nothing in return. It doesn't need to be efficient. It doesn't need to be optimized, journaled, or justified by what it prepares you for later. It simply needs to be allowed. So the next time the guilt rises, the next time your hands twitch toward another task you don't actually need to do, try sitting with it instead. Let the discomfort pass through you like weather. It will. It always does if you let it, instead of obeying it. And right now, sitting still might still feel wrong. But that wrongness was put there on purpose by a system that profited from you believing it. It was never the truth of who you are.